I know, if you can ask me now, how much is sitting in my bank statement, I will tell you.
We want to know.
I can tell you. I can tell you line by line because I've got a very healthy relationship with my money.
And I think people don't realize how quickly or how easily the savior complex thing comes in. The savior complex meaning once you get this money, you're trying to save everybody. And then you end up drowning and you've got nothing left to give. It's very easy to fall within that pattern and within that rhythm and thinking that's what you're meant to do. Especially if you're coming from a place, Sibu, where you say that you're meant to serve, or if your leadership style is to serve, you can fall within the trap, and I know I felt it. With Bontle Modiselle Dance Studios and needing to pay my dancers or my instructors, there came a point where I was just trying to do too much to get them in a comfortable position, not realizing that I'm bleeding money. And now, what is my solution to that? How do I work that? But also what I was enjoying about what you guys were saying was that I think you've cleared the air when it comes to judgment and having a conversation, saying with a financial advisor or financial institution. Because you get scared. Let's be real. Money conversations are very intimidating. It's very scary. And now you're trying to have this performative confidence or this performative success of, no, but I also understand, and I know, and I'm gonna. Show me there's no shame in your game in not knowing. In fact, the power in you realizing that you don't know is when that change happens. Because now you're being intentional about how you're trying to change, I guess, the trajectory of the things that you're doing. And I think people don't think about the psychology of money. I think people don't see themselves outside of it. You're living your life, you're in it so much every single day that you don't realize that, no, Saturday is actually your, you don't realize how much you've spent on, say, an Uber Eats and ordering online and online shopping, and you actually don't realize what your behaviors have been in and around money. So thank you so much for removing that. Speaking of, and staying within the conversation of not knowing, Tilly, I'm going to bring this one to you. I think people who either have been in the space of needing to negotiate deals and contracts, because contracts can be very intimidating. Guess what, man? It's a lot of English, a lot of big words. It's 30 pages. There's 30 pages, there's a deadline. And people just have a culture of skimming through and you look for where the signature is, or you get a contract and you look for a number, okay? And you think that's where the contract is. So I guess I want to speak to, and can you please rather speak to, what is a good, and this is hypothetically speaking, it's not to say that you're speaking to a certain type of contracted deal, but if I'm an individual who's reading a contract, what should I look for in a good deal? What does that constitute? What does it look like?
This is such a great question, and again, I was on a panel with SEBS about 2 weeks ago, and this is something they came out very strongly. I'd like for her to chip in on it. But in the immediate, Dale from Stain Entertainment had an incredible point on that and perspective on that, and understanding whether you are the A or the B in the contract, right? Understand your position. What is it that you want out of the contract, right? Besides the number. Sometimes the number is the most important thing in the contract. Sometimes the relationship is the most important thing in the contract. We're in the middle of negotiating something right now with our good partners at UMG, and in as much as the number might not be what we're looking at, but we're looking at the holistic picture of what it is that we're getting out of this thing. Sometimes you're negotiating from a perspective of, I just want to be in the room, right? So there's no umbrella answer to what a great contract looks like, especially if you don't know what it is that you want for yourself. So it is seasonal, it is dependent on what it is that you want at the time or within the period of the contract. And also, what I'm very, very cognizant of is, how does this translate to other things, right? Am I responding to this contract from a point of ego or from a point of what we desire out of the agreement? What I mean by that is, somebody come to me and says, I'm going to give you X amount. Let's say 50K, right? For one of my artists, that doesn't even get them off the couch, right? Like, they won't even go say hi to
Pay for the service of his car.
yeah. So, but sometimes, if the argument is compelling enough, and not the argument that the negotiator is making, the argument in my head as to why we should do it, I will convince him to do it. By virtue of knowing that if I take this from a Cebu, I know that I'm going to get 10 more things, not necessarily 10 more checks, but 10 more things. So there's a lot of times where we take in less than what we're supposed to from a financial perspective, but sometimes the money is the most important. I don't want us to shy away from that. That sometimes the money is important. Back to the deal that we're negotiating with our good partners at UMG, we trying to structure it in a way that we understand, okay, if I say no to this, right? Say, for example, Bontle, a partner comes to you, or rather a brand comes to you and says, we want you to promote trains. You know, Prasa comes to you and says, we want you to promote trains, and we've got X amount. Your rate might be $1 million for a 3 months period, you know? And you say no, and they're saying we've got 400,000. You're like, no, I'm $1 million. You know, I want $1 million. However, is there a competitor in the form of the train, whatever situation, that you are going to be losing out on by virtue of you partnering up with a train company? Sometimes it's industries that we would not otherwise lose anything by partnering up with. However, by virtue of doing that deal with that agency, you're building a relationship with them, and it's like paid internship. I'm not getting my full salary, but I'm getting money to be a part of this thing that I'm going to use to learn from. You know, one of the first deals that we agreed to, which has subsequently became our partners years after, was Sprite. That's one of the lowest checks that we took earlier on in the career, right? But even at that time, it was a small amount. But by virtue of how much partnership we formed with that team, we ended up building up, and it still comes up in the conversation, where the guys that were not even there within the negotiation initially are still referencing to, we know that you guys did this, and by virtue we see you as partners. And that has translated to the entire Coca-Cola operation. So it is on a deal-to-deal basis. You need to figure out and not let your ego stand in the way. I never do that. And whether be it to negotiate for my client or to negotiate for the business itself, where I am, sorry to say, head office, right? I'm as high as it gets from an approval or declining perspective. I still consult with my confidant. You know, I will go to an MJ, I will go to some of the other guys that we work that are, like you said earlier, you can't be an expert in everything. Even from a perspective, you will not be clear in everything. So I consult and say, yo, MJ, these people are offering this, 1, 2, 3, not necessarily just the money. Should we take it or shouldn't we take it? And he'll say, no, this is why we should or shouldn't take it. Sometimes I'm too excited to take it. It's not only about declining, sometimes it's about accepting as well. But as long as it makes sense to the bigger purpose of our business and the drive or the relationships that we're trying to build, sometimes we turn it down by virtue of who's negotiating, because we don't want to be affiliated with that person or that brand or that company.
Just to add to that, you know, just from a branding and corporate sense, clinically, you know, if you are able to define your return on investment on that contract, you know it's a good contract. But for me, over and above that, it's about, you know, are the two parties who are getting into this contract fundamentally getting what they aspire to get out of it? And for me, the relationship that has been created needs to be mutually beneficial. And I think also some of the best contracts, and I can attest to this with, you know, with our relationship, is the best contracts are built when the right type of relationship has been cultivated.
Go for it.
An experience from an agency perspective, negotiating contracts with clients that we've always wanted to work with. When TD speaks about the excitement, now you've done the pitch, you've gone through the pitch process, you've been shortlisted, now we're negotiating rates. Okay, we've spent 3 months to get to the table on, okay, we are agreeing to work with each other, let's go into contracting phase. Then the contract comes, and you don't read it because you just want to work for this brand. Couple of months down the line, that contract that you signed, and then like, yes, but remember, the here and here. And now you have to honor that contract unless you want to see yourself in court. So some of the things that I've learned to look out for, exclusivity clauses. That exclusivity that says, you are not allowed to work with other companies other competitor companies or brands within the sector, etc., etc. That's one. And I think that's a point of negotiation. If they're not meeting you at the rate that you asked for, then you're able to go back to them and say, okay, but this exclusivity clause, can it be removed considering you're not paying us for that exclusivity? Two, the term. When things start saying in perpetuity, that perpetuity word means forever. And forever.
Very long time. It's a very long time.
For content creators like a George and a Bontle, when a brand is engaging them and they put in there, your content can be used in perpetuity, that means that even when they are moving on to another brand, the brand that they were initially working with is still able to recycle their content because they signed. You like to do that? Oh, that's great. As brand. Okay, as brand, yes. But I think a third one is the jurisdiction, and we don't necessarily look out for this because we operate from the mindset that we're working in South Africa. But when you get to a stage where you're working with global companies or multinational companies, look at that jurisdiction thing, because when something or if something goes wrong and the jurisdiction is outside of South Africa and they are a company based in the USA, in LA, for example, that's where you must go and lodge your complaint. The courts in South Africa have absolutely no power over your matter if the jurisdiction rests outside of South Africa. So I think that's just from a personal experience what I'm going to say. The exclusivity clause, the term, as well as the jurisdiction, please look out for those things. And then, finally, termination. I want to termination in COVID. I learned it the hard way. Force majeure allows people to terminate things without notice. Now, a campaign that we had planned for months, we put in so much work, and maybe it is even a retainer client that has been paying us for a couple of months on consistently. Force majeure allows them to just terminate the contract immediately, and you won't see a single cent, and there's nothing you can do about it. Meanwhile, you've already spent in good faith. So yeah, look at those things, please, when evaluating contracts before jumping because you're excited to sign.
Yeah. One of the other things that I wanted, just two things, is also when we negotiate our contracts, I don't look at the amount and assume that that full amount is ours, right? What I mean by that is that to a lot of people, getting a professional to look at the contract is a waste of money, right? Because I've negotiated multiple contracts, I know how a deal is structured, but to Sibu's point, there's a lot of things that you might miss by legal terms because you're just looking at the money. You're excited to either get into the deal or to start the work, right? So don't see 100K, a 10 rand that sits on the contract as your money. And that speaks to other things as well. The finances that go into what you receive are not necessarily all for you to spend. A part of that has to sustain and grow your business, right? That's the first thing about the actual rands on the contract. It is not exactly.
Sometimes you've got to pay content creators to help you
execute. Yeah.
And when you're seeing 100K.
Yeah. And to people like I don't know if it's called George or Wasabi. I always feel like I'm being overly familiar when I call celebrities by their, George Wasabi. So to people like you, there's also, the creation of the content itself, right, that you have to make sure that is factored into. But that's just on the financial side. But back to the question about, what are the things that I look at. Sometimes it's also who's negotiating the contract, right? So for me, I'm working with a Tabang who works for Liberty, and Tabang wants to execute this thing on behalf of Liberty, and they want to work with us, right? Tabang is a growing person within the industry, and he's incredible, right? Let's say he's from an agency. So me making him shine allows me a bigger relationship with him, even though in this immediate deal, I'm not getting what it is that I would otherwise desire. However, in 4 years' time, this is the same person that's going to put me in bigger rooms. I've done a lot of deals where it's not even about the brand or the campaign itself. It's about this person or the agency being in a good relationship and just looking out for them. Sometimes I do a lot of that where I make it abundantly clear that it wouldn't have otherwise happened had it not been for this person. Matter of fact, yeah, last week I told her, there's something that Sibu called me about, and I told her that this conversation would not be happening if it wasn't for you. Like, it is purely for you. Sibu is out of love, but some people it's out of, okay, I'm trying to build my relationship with them. Even with us, we constantly grow our relationship by doing well and looking out for each other. However, it's very important that the money is not the only thing that you're looking at. Outside of the other things that are incredible, the practical things like the contract terms and stuff. So even on a human level, what is it that I want with this person that's negotiating? By doing this solid for them, what does that look like for me in future? Whether you can cash in on it within the year or 2 or 5 years. I've had people that I started speaking to in like 20, before you were, yeah, that have only started giving me deals this year. This is over 10 years of maintaining relationships, and then eventually it turns out to be, from a contract perspective, it ends up being, a relationship that's fruitful. So when you're looking at the terms of the deal, it shouldn't only be only about the paper, but the people and the deal, or rather the company and the brand itself also matter. That for me, I find it very important.
There are actually people you'll meet here today that you could be making money with in 10 years' time, and the relationship or where you remember them from is that you guys connected over a thing that you experienced today.
And a lot of the points you guys have raised are not unique to just the entrepreneurial world, but very much relevant to young professionals. Because I think there's challenges, especially as young professionals, to come into a work environment with that mindset that you can negotiate your salary. You can bring these topics up. You can pivot into another area of the business if that's an area you'd like to expand into. And just having that mindset of valuing different players in the business, understanding that developing a network outside of your boss, outside of the person who does your KPIs, expands your value in the business. We're talking a lot about entrepreneurs, but there is this concept called an entrepreneur. So it's like you are within a business, but you are an entity in itself, or an entity in the organization. And I think that's a mindset that we can all gain a lot from, because, if you are able to provide value to a business even beyond what your paycheck gives you, that really pivots your ability to then even have those negotiations, walk into rooms that other people don't necessarily think you should be walking into. And it really changes the trajectory in terms of what you can achieve within a professional setting. Even developing a network, not just within your organization, but within the broader industry. So yes, you might be in a liberty environment, but start to understand what is happening in the competition, what makes them good, bad, strong. Let that work for you within the role that you're in, but you never know when that's going to work for you when you're ready to make a change.
Yeah.
Just to
Go for it,
just to further on your point of networking, because the single best thing that I did for my career was to build relationships. I don't necessarily. Before I started working, I would always hear the term networking, and I was like, what is that? What do you mean? Like, do I need to go to events and talk to people? But it's honestly just, in a very simple way, building relationships with the people that you work with, building relationships with people, that you meet today, for example. I remember my boss, when I started my first job, said that in his first year of working, he spent almost his entire salary taking people in the business for coffees. Just having a conversation outside of work with your work people, and building those relationships, because you may not see the effect immediately, but it's investing in yourself. It's something that's going to come to fruition in the long term, because the only way that you're going to get opportunities is if people know the name to call, and they're only going to know the name to call if you're building their relationships and they can call on you and they understand a little bit more about you. So yes, definitely the concept of building relationships is something that I recommend.
And authentic relationships. I think authentic relationships, because you don't just rock up and like, hi, I'm here to network. So yeah, authenticity also plays a big role.
Go for it.
Can I add that sometimes it's not a personality thing, because also not everybody is outspoken, and sometimes your work can network for you.
Yep.
If you're doing really great work within the responsibilities you've been given, people will talk about that and say, oh, are you looking for someone to help you with this? You know, the intern helped me do this, that, and the other. And eventually word gets around, see, that's the girl or that's the guy to go to for thing A or B. And with relationships, you know, burning bridges, when you burn bridges, just have in mind the idea that there's gonna come a time where you've got to cross a river and you burnt that bridge. So don't burn the bridge, because you never know what's gonna happen down the line. Life is short there, but life is longer. And I speak on this with personal relationships that you have. There are friends that, you know, you are, or people you're friends with in varsity, and then you got this fight, you know, friendship breakups are so hard. And you were wrong in the situation, and all you had to do was say sorry and care that you don't want to ruin this relationship, because you guys studied the same thing, then you find yourself being hired in the same grad program, then you find her being your line manager, the girl that you fought with, and you didn't care that you fought about that. What type of experience are you going to have working with that person? Also, in the jobs that you do have right now, don't just quit because you're mad, because you're angry, because you also never know where you might bump into the people whose lives you affected by just throwing your toys. I have an experience of working with someone at Duma Collective, and today she's our client. Imagine if when she resigned, we were like, oh, these people don't see us go, it's fine. And then 3 months later, there she is sending us a brief or being roped into an email. So guys, do not burn bridges, and let your relationship or let the work that you do also network for you if you don't have the personality to do it, and be able to approach people to say, hi, I'm so this is what I do.
That is so important. I think I said this again a couple of weeks ago, where I said, my biggest thing, and the team at the office know, I don't want to walk into a boardroom for a deal or for whatever it is that we're presenting and see somebody in the boardroom and think, fuck, this person is here. Right? I want to walk in rooms, and when I see somebody who I've had an encounter with, and say, yes, this person is in the room. So we make sure, or rather we work very hard to make sure that the people that we've encountered, that we've done deals with, that we've worked with, that when we part, they go become an extension of us and not necessarily a problem. When it comes to the relationships you spoke about then, and that's extremely important. One of the junior brand liaisons in the team, the conversation that I had with him first had nothing to do with him working for a bridge. I was looking for apartments for my nephew who was moving to Joburg, and he was a junior at a real estate company that rents out apartments. And I engaged with this guy. I told him, within a year, you'll be working for us. I was not there to recruit him. I didn't even know him, but I was late. Something happened. I had to postpone. And his conduct on the phone, before we even met, you know, he's like, "Yo, sorry, I'm in class. I can only make it at 12 p.m. And I was like, I only have 10, you know. I can only make it at 10 a.m. He's like, okay, I'm going to make a plan. After saying I'm going to make 10 a.m., I still arrived there at 11. He was already there waiting for me from 10. You know, and how he said, you say, now you made me late, how he conducted himself, and how he showed me the apartment, and how he explained the area. I told him right there and then, within a year, you'll be working for the company. I ended up working for the company in less time than a year, and he's one of our best performing people within the company. So that engagement and that encounter is extremely important, because you're constantly speaking for yourself. Back to the contract negotiation. Before you even get to the black and white, you've already started negotiating your contract. So by virtue of us getting to a place of sitting on a table, I already knew the type of person that he was. So that already counted towards him when it came to the contract negotiating. And further, going forward, I know the type of person that he is, and it makes it otherwise easier for him to be a part of the brand. And the last thing that I want to touch on with regards to relationships and networking is, it's all good and well to say we need to know how to network, right? But how do you use your network? You know, do a bit of research. You can have Sibu's number in your phone, you can have Bontle, George, and everyone's numbers in your phone, or you can meet me every day. And if all you're doing is just take pictures with Sibu to post that I'm with Sibu, you know, that's not going to do anything for you. You know, I've always said, I I've never had the desire to meet one of my biggest and what do you call it, icons in the form of Jay-Z, right? Up until recently, because now I have a question for him, right? I have an actual conversation for him that I want. I don't just want to meet him for pictures, right? So that should be the purpose. If you want to meet a Tili, if you want to meet a Sibu, know what it is that you want to have a conversation. People don't have time. Like, Sibu's got a lot of things that I think she posted last night that nobody bothered me for a month, I think he said. I'm going to be very busy. So, but when you do see them, people are dealing with a lot. It's month end. It's a lot of things going on. So if you're going to sit with me and say, yeah, no, you know what, Joe, put me on. That's just annoying. Like, what do you mean put me on? Now, I must figure out what it is that, I can put me on. That is an equivalent of me going to a Sebs and saying, Sebs, we're an entertainment company, do something. Come on, you managing budgets, do something. Now, she must figure out for me what it is that she must do for me. So the put me on thing is an equivalent of Sebs, do something. And those questions or those kind of conversations are annoying. You meet a Wasabi, you want to do something, you want to collaborate with them, have it in a quick 30-second, 45 to a minute presentation. Yo, I know you're busy. I've got this idea, I want to do 1, 2, 3 with you. I think this is how you'd benefit. And then if we do get the deal, you're getting 80%, I'm getting 20%, as long as you acknowledge me. Done. Even if he turns you down, you'll get some sort of positive respect or response about how to go about it. And this ties into the contract negotiation. It doesn't start with you getting that paper. It starts with how you present yourself and knowing how to use your network.
So really, ultimately, your net work is your net worth. It's not a fancy saying. It's actually in real time. And just to double down on what you had said earlier on, Sandy, which I found quite interesting, and I guess circling back to contract negotiations and deals, or whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're a professional and you're trying to apply for this job, the first offer doesn't have to be the last one. Pushback sometimes is often necessary, right? But you also need to be able to justify that pushback. Under what circumstances? How are you able to justify why you need to get 5 Rand more? And like Sibu was saying, if you're not able to articulate it yourself, if your work can justify it, that makes it 1,000 times better for you. George, I want to bring it to you. Do you have a manager?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so you're not having the conversations yourself.
So I only got a manager recently, like I think it was only a year or 2 years ago, but I was doing everything myself, managing myself, all of those things. And it got to a point, I guess, where my manager actually sat me down and said, you might not see it right now, but you're struggling to keep up. The deadlines, you're not meeting them, because people want their contracts, like we've been speaking about, people want their contracts on this certain date. Sibu just explained what force majeure is. I didn't know, but I've signed many contracts with that term. So,
Stress.
Stress. So, yeah, getting through with management, I think it has helped me have somebody on my corner who understands things that I don't understand. Because as a creative, as much as I'm an entrepreneur, I'm also the happiest when I'm just creating. And at any point of my life, I never really set out to understand the business side of it. But now with the team, with the management side, they explain things that I need to know, I need to understand, and what implications I am getting myself into when I signed the contract. So I think it was very important to get people on my side. I didn't understand it because Uti said, sometimes we don't see the value of getting a professional, or you want to keep the money close to your chest. You're like, yo, now I have to split with management. I have to split. They actually made a joke, Uti, I came with my own camera here when I could have just hired a photographer. And I'll be honest, it is that thing, yo, hey,
Yeah.
like, you know, but sometimes you do have to let go. You
Yeah.
have to relinquish to other
control.
people. Exactly. And that's been the toughest thing right now in my career, to let go. Because there's so many things I need to let go of. Management, now I'm not dealing with clients and stuff like that. They deal with it, and things only come to me when they are done. And that has been the greatest pleasure ever. Because I used to be afraid to negotiate. I used to be afraid to push back and say, hey, I deserve this much more. But they can, and I'm just on the side like, so that also letting go also has like some certain pleasures that I'm learning of right now, and I'm freeing myself up. So it's been very important to give to people who have a better positioning than you, better understanding than you.
Oh,
basically.
absolutely. And I can attest to that. Oh, yeah, Tini?
To that point, when you're talking about you being a creative and not wanting to, or initially not wanting to negotiate yourself, even right now, first of all, let me start by saying your team is very strict. They told us if he's here for a second more than the agreed term, they're going to charge us extra, so we have to speed this up. And
I wouldn't know how to say that. I wouldn't know how to say that without them.
But it's also important to learn, guys, that contract negotiations are not a financial negotiating meeting, right? So there's ways to increase value without necessarily asking to increase the rand. So let's say, for example, I say I want you to be a part of the panel, right? And I've got 10 rand, right? You say to me, no, I charge 12 rand, right? The negotiation could be, okay, from that 12 rand, I was going to pay my own makeup artist, I was going to pay my own stylist, or rather, I was going to pay my own camera guy. So you know what, Tilly, I'll do it for 10 rand, but I need X, Y, and Z. You find that you still get the money that you wanted without spending on the things that you would have spent on. So we need to look, and I'm oversimplifying it by putting it that way. However, again, to the deal or the deals that we negotiate with UMG, it's one of the things that we look at, okay, they don't have X amount. But you know what? We also are a marketing agency. So the activations that we're going to do, we want them as an agency, from an agency perspective. So now we're not changing the amount on the actual contract, we're just increasing value. By virtue of that, we've got agency work, we've got this work, and also, on top of that, now our profile grows from the brand that we have under our agency. So it's not always trying to force for the amount to be more. But to a professional that's not an entrepreneur, where you're seeking work, it could be, okay, Tilly, you say you want me at Bridge, okay, you can't afford to pay me X amount. First of all, you need to, what I advise people is three amounts, right? When you're applying for work. Is the desired that you would ideally like to have, the actual that you know is realistic, and the least that you'll be willing to go in at. And those are before you even go to the deal. And don't negotiate from a point of fear, right? Understanding that life happens, that sometimes you can't afford to let go of opportunities. But I can immediately tell if you are desperate for the position. And I'm not talking about hunger. I love people that are hungry for positions and for work, but desperation creates a lot of mistakes, and I don't like working with desperate people. And I'm not talking about your life situation can be difficult. So have those lined up. I'm willing to, at the very least, accept 5 rand. Ideally, I want 10 rand. But realistically, I know you're looking at around 7, 8 rand. Have that in your mind, and you must be willing to walk away if it doesn't meet that, because it will definitely affect how you engage with the person or the brand or whoever that you're negotiating with. So those things are extremely important for me. I apply them to myself, I apply them to the business, and I'd like for us to maybe try them as well, if that at all works. And you can come with value. Say, Sibu, I know you've got 49 people in your business, I'm the 50th one, because I'm gonna bring 1, 2, 3. You don't have to pay me for 3 months. You don't have to pay me for 3 months, but after 3 months, this is what it is that I would desire, those 3 amounts again. In that period of the 3 months that you're volunteering, make 100% sure that Sibu cannot live without you. That if you leave, the business feels like it's going to crumble. Now you are literally the business's crutch. And I'm saying that because she's a perfect example of that. I'll keep on saying the story of Sibu, how she started working with us. She said to me she wanted to work at Philip. I was like, we don't have nothing. What I meant was that we didn't have money. She came to the first Philip. She bought a ticket, by the way. I don't know how she made it backstage. I saw her backstage. Like, hey man, Sibu. And then she ends up bought a Gap, taking care of that. And from that point onward, we felt like if she's not a part of this, it doesn't happen. So you come in there, you negotiate before the black and white. You've already negotiated yourself.
Can I just wanted to, sorry, Bontle, just in terms of the discussion that's being had right now, and if I look at it as a perspective in terms of how I got into the space that I'm in right now, in as much as how, the onus is on us to self-educate and to seek knowledge, I do feel, though, that there still is a gap, and call it within life sciences or life orientation, whatever that subject was, where there's a gap of, having a little bit more education on financial management. I hear the conversation you were having around, when do we first seek financial management help? It's a daunting conversation. You wouldn't even know where to start as a young professional, negotiating your first salary. You coming in as an intern, as a junior, you're just hungry to get a pay slip and to get into the industry and to get into the job and to gain experience. Your mind's that you'll accept something that's actually below the value that you're going to bring to the business. But if you are not, if you don't have the know-how and the skill and also a little bit of guts to be like, actually, I'm pushing back as junior as I am, that education for me, I just think is also still missing, just even within a school phase, within life orientation. Because like I said, for many of us, the conversation around financial management is not happening at home. And it's not happening at home because, our parents didn't want it to happen. We are currently first generation of people who are actually working in corporate, who are actually getting a pay slip and who are actually contributing to the economy and corporate South Africa at large, So the conversations are not happening. They're not happening at school. You come into this new space and you yourself don't even know where to start. And I just wish, for me, I just implore, financial institutions, if they can work with government and the education sector, just to add that level, no matter how small, on financial jargon, financial management, what it means. And when you come in as a young person, what's that first step? What's that first thing that you need to know so that you can set yourself up for success?
What's the cost belief? And then it is push or cross, and then something. Now, you saw a number on the contract or the offer letter, but at the end of the month, that's not the number that was fine for, because you didn't tell me this PAYE, etc., etc. So that's basic information.
And there's so much information, Bontle, on the very same platforms that we consume junk from. A very good point was brought up earlier. You can Google as much as you want. You can go to YouTube as much as you want. You are still going to get to a level where you need professionals. However, just get started with, instead of watching an hour of Keeping Up with, just try to dedicate at least 10, 15 minutes every day of your life. I'm not talking every other day. Every day of your life towards self-development. Just watch. There's so many. If you want to get a six-pack, if you want a gym, just 10, 15 minutes of professionals and fitness instructors. If you want to be financially wiser, just 15, 10 minutes, to the point where now, okay, I've reached the ceiling as far as how much I can self-teach, let me reach out to the professionals. So that's so important. There's a lot of people that talk about the same things that Sebs is talking about, how to negotiate for yourself when you get into a deal, or rather how to negotiate when you get to a job, how to prepare yourself for a job interview. There's so many of those online, and yet we're spending a lot of time watching a slick talk. Every single day, we're consuming that every single day, but doing very little for self-development. Just cut down that in the same manner that we said we look at your bank statement from a professional expert perspective and saying, okay, I'm consuming, I'm eating, I'm spending too much on restaurants, I'm spending too much at just take a percentage of what you already, on the platforms that you're already on, and build it down, or rather boil it down to, personal development. And you'll see that makes a significant change in life. Read a book. Even if you read 2-3 pages a day, read a book. You find that now 2-3 pages is not enough. A book is now no longer enough per year. You now find yourself reading 4 books at the same time. MJ used to fight me and say I must read. Right now, read 4 books. You know, I used to hate it. I used to just, no, me, consumer, man, there's a way that I do it. And you say, no, read. And I realize value in that. I'm not saying that we are all going to read. However, I'm just pointing down to what Sebs is saying. There's so many help tools on the very same platforms that we go to consume junk. And if we take a percentage of that for self-development, we become in a better position.
I wanted to add a point. I wanted to add sorry. I wanted to add to your point. I think if you look at our background as South Africans, if you look like our culture, our history, if I'm taking myself, for instance, I grew up in a family, mom was a housewife, dad owned trucks, but it was never a time in a dinner table where we would actually sit and talk about how much dad was making. But food was there every day, we would go on family holidays, everything was there. In such a way that my mom then had a tech shop, because the trucking business, then my dad got a contract at ABI. So then my mom had a tech shop at home. So there was a little basket where there was little coins there. Now and again, when you need bread, water, whatever, you just take money from this basket and then go buy it. Like in my working world, then my relationship with money, I then thought every time when I get paid, the money is just going to come from somewhere. Because I grew up with a little basket where you just go and get the money from, I just thought it's just sitting there, And also, if you're looking at other people from their own perspective as well, they've got a different upbringing. And then it's a thing of these conversations are not taking place. Like, if you look at the other families, they've always been probably at home, the mom is a nurse, a dad is a policeman. They've never ran businesses. So now, like you said, Ella on SIPS, when you said, we are the generational, we're there to break those generational curses. We are the first graduates, first person to own a business. So then it becomes a thing of, it's the fear of the unknown, where people are actually thinking, if I'm going to be sitting with a financial plan, I'm going to get judged. These people are going to see my bank statement, they're going to know how much I earn. While those things, you have to be friends with reality. You must print a bank statement. I print my bank statement every month. I know, if you can ask me now, how much is sitting in my bank statement, I will tell you.
We want to know.
I can tell you. I can tell you line by line because I've got a very healthy relationship with my money. There's a favorite saying that I like, whatever you don't manage, you will lose. Yeah. Essentially, that's what then happens with our finances because you're not managing it well. We don't have a healthy relationship with our monies.
Can I ask a question on just, the bank statement question? I've always found looking at my finances very daunting. I find it absolutely daunting. And I think for the first time this year, I'm very ashamed to say, it was in January. For the first time, I'm like, I actually just don't know where my money is going. Where is it going? And I didn't print it. I went on to online banking. And I looked at my spending, and I was shocked, but so shocked to the point that I was actually slightly depressed, right? And I suppose my question is, how often should you be reviewing your bank statement? I mean, I've been in corporate for 11 years, but that was the first time I actually sat with myself, and I had to be honest about my expenditure. It wasn't nice because I got depressed, but how often should you be doing that recon for yourself?
Every day? I'm joking. So essentially what it is, financial planning it's a journey, it's a process, right? So I think as you start, you can do it monthly. Because obviously, I'm assuming as well that you guys are running budgets. Assumption.
If you're not, please join Mind My Money. If you don't have a budget, you're still trying out, please look for Mind My Money online. It's free. Okay.
Thank you, Zandi. So I will assume that people are running budgets because this is another way of measuring your finances. So to your question again, I think as a start, you can start monthly because essentially how you do it is the first time you do it, you print it. I know that we must save trees, but for the first time you must print it, get a green cookie and a pink cookie. So the green cookie, you're highlighting all your needs. So anything that you cannot live without for 3 months, that's a need. And then with the pink cookie, you highlight the wants. So the wants is, I want a jacket there, I want this there. if exactly right. So anything that you cannot live without is a need. Things that you can live without, that's a want. And then after doing that, you then check your income. Let's use an example. You're earning 10,000 rands. You then take this 10,000 rands because it comes in your bank statement, right? And then you check 50% of that. Is it going to your needs? If it's not, oopsie, we've got a problem. Because 50% of the 5,000, you should go to your needs. And then the left money now is what? 5,000 rands from our small salary. And then you look at the 30%. Where is the 30% going? It should be going to your savings, and then the other 15% should be going to in case of emergency funds. Already COVID taught us that if you do not in case of emergency funds, you are in trouble. So that 15% goes there. So how much we left now? 2,000 rands, right? And then you pay yourself a salary within a salary. You can go to lengths of, you can even open a separate bank account where you pay the 2,000 rands. Because sometimes the reason why people fail in budgeting is because there's no discipline. It's not that like you don't have money, you're just not managing your finances correctly. And then you know that my salary within this salary is 2,000 rands. And if you're spending more than 2,000 rands, you are the problem because you've paid yourself a salary.
Just to add on to the question where you guys asked about what FSPs are doing in the FinEd space. So I think there's a lot of content out there. Zandi mentioned Mind My Money, which teaches you about budgeting, how to do it. But even on your banking app for most banks, I know the one, Standard Bank has this, where it will show you, it's a tracker that shows you how much you spend on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. It will even tell you you've got 600 Rand that you're going to spend in this week, and it's most likely going to be at these food shops or at Uber Eats, for instance, So just looking at, I think FSPs have come a long way in terms of the banking apps and the tech there. So just scrolling through, it may not be looking at your bank statement, but they're little budget trackers that they've built into your banking app. So you can check it every day if that wouldn't make you anxious, or weekly, just to see where you are in terms of your weekly budget. And then the other point I wanted to make was that FSPs have come a long way again in financial education literacy. So there's Mind My Money. If you guys get an email from your bank that has a podcast, you may think, oh, this is too long, but they're little 5-minute videos that teach you about budgeting or investing or saving or whatever the topic is of the month. So I think reading communication from there. We're also in the social media space. I think a lot of FSPs feature there, even in terms of podcasts, instead of sending traditional communication, there are podcasts out there on how to manage your money. So a lot of resources out there, and not just on, I don't know how many, what names we can use, but on those shorter social media apps, Yeah, so featuring there, I think it's just, the information's there, it's about just consuming it. Yeah.
You can also start small. Like Standard Bank, for instance, we've got Stash. Stash, you can even save 10 rands. No?
Stash.
You can start small.
Stash,
You
yeah.
Stash.
And I learned about Stash from season 1. And from the day, okay, this thing's on the thing. I am falling on Stash.
And you can decide how you stash. Yeah.
I think these, and I hope you guys are paying attention because, I know you're hearing a lot of terms and I know you're hearing a lot of stuff, but I think getting a grip on these concepts and how it is that you're able to do certain things is really going to, help you change and affect your relationship with money and how it is that you engage with it, whether on a professional capacity or on a personal capacity, and I think that's so important.